Today we're going to be going over the top 10 Pokemon cards moving in April 2024, primarily focusing on the Sword and Shield era. Now I know last week we went over some of the sealed products such as the booster boxes, and today we're going to be focusing on the cards that you can get from these booster boxes. Starting off with the card that everybody's been talking about, Umbreon V Alolan from Evolving Skies. Now we've seen multiple Poketubers talking about this card, maybe that gave it a little bit of a price hike as well. Started off at around an $80 card from the beginning of the year up until the last month where we've seen a huge spike, and now we're almost at $180 US. That is an astronomical price for just an Altart V card. Now looking at some of the recent sales on eBay here, we can see that they have been going for around that price, so it is legitimately around that price right now. It is insane. It is a beautiful card. I'm not going to deny that. $180 seems like a bit much, but again, with Evolving Skies having no reprints, and the price of the booster box being at what it is right now, it probably makes sense that this card, as well as other Evolving Skies cards, are going to go up in price. Next up is Gutina V from Lost Origins. Now, we did speak about Lost Origins last week and what the price is for the booster box, and still available actually at the Pokemon Center for about 186 Canadian. Mind you, that's in Canadian. So it's probably cheaper in US. This card was about $240 to $250 US, and now is anywhere $340 US for just the raw card. Now, if we look at some of the recent sales on eBay for this card, and I'm talking recent, like in the last few days, PSA 10s were going anywhere from $700 to $750 US. That is insane. Now, for me, since the Lost Origin booster box is still available at the Pokemon Center, I would highly consider going for the booster box and trying to pull this card, because you know what? A PSA 10 for $750, that's pretty crazy. But again, with the Sword and Shield era slowly aging, these cards will probably continue to climb. Now, this wasn't one of my favorite alternate arts from the Sword and Shield era, but you know what? It is something that we want to talk about because $750 is quite expensive. Next up, we have the Blazak Vmax from Chilling Reign. Again, somewhere around $170 card at the beginning of the year, and now we're looking at around $220. It has gone up as well. Now, looking at some of the recent sales on this one, a PSA 10 was going for around $500, so it's not bad, and it's a beautiful looking card, and it's something that we may want to consider still picking up because, you know what, it's still not a bad price. Again, I know I keep saying this over and over, but the older the booster boxes and these cards get from the Sword and Shield era, the more they're going to be valued in the future. So it is something to consider picking up. Next up is the Vano Pikachu. Now, this is the only card that we're going to be talking about today that's not from the Sword and Shield era, but I do want to keep a close eye on it because of all the ups and downs. Again, this was a $140 card just about 3 months ago and has gone down and trickled back up a little bit now to around the 95 mark. Looking at some of the recent sales on a PSA 10 on this one, you're looking anywhere from $200 to $225. Again, it's not a bad price. I don't know if there's going to be really another reprint or not. There's lots of talks and all that fun stuff, but again, I do want to just keep a look on it. Maybe hold off on buying this one for now, in my opinion. Back to the Sword and Shield era now with Gengar VMAX Altart. Now, this one over the last month has just had a huge climb. We were around the $200 mark just about a month ago, and now we're around $320. That is a huge increase. Now, I know I spoke about Fusion Strike booster boxes increasing, and again, this card is one of the most difficult cards to pull from that set, this one including Espeon, which we'll be touching on later. But again, I just wanted to touch on this one because it has gone up substantially in price. If we look at some of the recent sales on PSA 10s for this card, we're looking around a $700 mark, which is crazy. It's definitely in the top 10 most expensive cards in the Sword and Shield era. It will probably stay there and most probably even increase from what it's at right now. Next up is the Altart Charizard V from Brilliant Stars. Now, this one hasn't had that much movement, anywhere from $120 to $140 now USD. It's not that expensive, and looking at recent sales at PSA 10s, we're looking at around $200 to $250. It's not that expensive, which is quite sad to me because I actually really love this card, and it's not going up as much as we wanted to. Now, does that mean that it will not increase in the future? Personally, I think it will, because you know what? It's a Charizard, it's a beautiful looking card, and sooner or later, Brilliant Stars will run out of stock and it will be an expensive card. So this is one that's at a great price right now, even if it's just a raw or a PSA 10, whichever way you want to go. It's something that you want to consider grabbing. And again, I did mention in my previous video that Brilliant Stars booster boxes are available on the Pokemon Center, so you do want to check that out if you're still seeking this card, or again, if you just want to hold a booster box sealed. Of course, we're going to be touching on a lot of Evolving Skies cards because that is the most expensive set from the Sword and Shield era. And next up is Rayquaza VMAX Altart. Around a month ago, this card was going for $240 and now is at around $330 US. Again, another substantial increase with that one. If we look at some of the recent sales on eBay for this card as well, we're looking at anywhere around the $600 mark. Again, another expensive card up there. Not as expensive as the Gengar, but I'm sure this one will climb as well because we've got a lot of Rayquaza fans out there. And again, just under the Moonbreon, of course. Next up would be the Rayquaza VMAX from Evolving Skies. Evolving Skies is, of course, a very expensive booster box to buy right now as well. They can go anywhere from $600 to $700. So really and truly, with the pull rates and how bad they are, I would consider buying this card. Even though it's very expensive, it's just not worth buying the booster box if you want this card, because if you buy a box, chances of you pulling it are very, very slim. So at a $600 mark for a PSA 10, I'd still go for it. Next up is Lugia V Alolan from Silver Tempest. This is one of my favorite cards, as I mentioned before, and it has started to increase in price, which is what I expected as well. $120 roughly earlier in the year, and now we're at $170. Again, it's a playable card, it's a great looking card, and Silver Tempest is still quite relatively cheap in comparison to other booster boxes. So it is something that I would buy to try to pull rather than buying the card. Or if you want the easier way out, you can just buy it. PSA 10s are going anywhere around the $350 mark, which is still a good price as well. And again, if you're a fan of Lugia V, this is one of the nicest looking cards in my opinion. And as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be touching the Spon VMAX alternate art from Fusion Strike, going from around $125 mark card about a month ago to $160. Another strong increase here for this beautiful card. Looking at some of the recent sales, anywhere from $360 to $500 US. A really nice card. Again, if you're a fan of Espeon, this is a beauty. Now, would I go for the booster box or just buy the card straight out? I think I would go with straight out buying this card because of what has happened with Fusion Strike. The pull rates are very difficult. The whole scam that occurred with it as well. It's just better to get the card if you really want it and just buy it out. And the last card that I want to touch on is everybody's favorite, the Moonbreon. We've seen about a $100 increase over the last month, going anywhere from $600 to $700 US. And if we look at some of the recent sales on eBay for this one, it was going for around $1,300 USD. With Evolving Skies booster boxes going for around $600 to $700 and the pull rates being quite awful. Again, it is a card that you want to consider buying because there are no reprints happening for Evolving Skies that we know of, and we know that this card is just going to continue to increase. So whether you want it raw or in a graded form, either way, I would go with the card rather than buying the booster box. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Again, these are some of the cards that are making the biggest movements from the Sword and Shield era in the recent month. Some of the cards that you want to consider buying. Again, let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section about what you think the movements are going to be in the coming month or so, as well as which one you think is the best to buy right now. Thanks again, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.